Well, today's talk message is dedicated to the human spirit. And I have a couple of, a cute little story from this magazine called The Week. It's published in the U.S., but it's about a little lady on Vancouver Island. It says a 95-year-old Canadian woman had to shoo a black bear with a sweet tooth out of her house twice in one day. Anna Stady, who lives on Vancouver Island, was watching TV when she heard a clattering in the kitchen and found the bear rummaging in her cupboards. So I told him to get out, she said, 95 years old. I told him to get out, but soon he was back. Stady heard more noise in the kitchen, and this time discovering the bear was mauling her sugar bin. I said, I'm really angry with you. Go home. Stady says she was not afraid and that the bear hasn't come back. And then she concluded, I still rule my kitchen. I love it. What a testament to the human spirit. Along those same lines, from a magazine, the same magazine, The Week, is an article by an Adam Sternberg who took a class at Yale University. And the class is basically on how to be happier. Professor Laurie Santos, she said she didn't set out to create the most popular course in the history of Yale University and the most talked about college course in America. She just wanted her students to be happy, and they certainly look happy as they file into a church, a literal church, Battle Chapel, that's been converted to a lecture hall on the Yale campus on a sunny day in an April afternoon, lugging backpacks and chatting before taking their seats in the pews. The weather outside is gorgeous. Professor Santos is playing her pre-class Get Pumped playlist featuring the Black Eyed Peas, I Got a Feeling. And let's not forget, all of these students are currently going to Yale. What's not to be happy about? Well, then she says quite a bit, it turns out. The very fact that Santos' new course, Psych 157, Psychology in the Good Life, is so wildly popular with over 1,200 enrolled students suggests that she's on to something when she tells me one day, pre-lecture, college students are much more overwhelmed, much more stressed, much more anxious, and much more depressed than they've ever been. I think we really have a crisis, not only on large colleges, but I think in other places, in terms of self-care and mental health. Sadly, she says, not just in colleges. According to a recent survey by the American College of Health Association, 52% of students reported feeling hopeless, while 39% suffered from severe depression that they had found it difficult to function at some point during the previous year. In the face of this epidemic unhappiness, Santos decided to design a course in positive psychology, the field study that focuses on well-being as opposed to psychological dysfunction. The thing that makes this course different is that we all focus on what I call behavior change, the science of how you move your behavior around. How do you actually change your habits and use your situation to your advantage? In her very first lecture, Santos emphasizes to her class that she wants to teach them not just the science of happiness, but the practice of happiness. And over the next 21 lectures, Adam Sternberg noticed a lot in his attendance. In the second lecture, Santos looks at the work of a Sonia Lyubomirsky, a psychologist at the University of California, Riverside. She's well known for her thought experiment about what affects our happiness, which she expresses in a pie chart. She proposes that roughly 50% of happiness is determined by genes, totally out of our control. Roughly 10% is determined by circumstances, somewhat out of our control. And finally, 40% is determined by the thoughts, actions, and attitudes which are entirely within our control. The takeaway is simply this: we are inclined to assume that circumstances play the biggest role in our happiness when research suggests that they play the smallest role. So what are the true sources of personal happiness? Happy people devote time to family and friends. They practice gratitude. They practice optimism. They are physically active. They savor life's pleasures and try to live in the present moment. That seems to be a very key part of spirituality over the last 20 years. Staying in the moment. And I remember just last week listening to Ellen Hayakawa in the workshop down below talking about how to discover one's life purpose. And from that life purpose arises one's mission in life. But first, she said, the first step is to cultivate what is called deep inner listening. And so this past Tuesday morning at 5 a.m., I was sitting out on my deck. It was very quiet. And I sat in a chair and I said to myself, God, what do you want me to speak about? What would serve the people that come on Sunday? And I had a process that I went into in the quiet of deep inner listening. And I heard the words within my own consciousness that said, keep the fire. Keep the fire burning. And then the artist who had an album by that same name, Kenny Loggins, who had an album that came out in 1979. And one of the other songs was, This Is It. How many people in here remember Kenny Loggins? He's still around. So I'd like to share some of these lyrics with you, because it was a very clear download of sorts of guidance into my own consciousness. This is it. There have been times in my life I've been wondering why. Still, somehow I believed we'd always survive. Now I'm not so sure you're waiting to hear one good reason to try. But what more can I say? What's left to provide? You think that maybe it's over? Well, only if you want it to be. Are you going to wait for a sign, your miracle? Stand up and fight. Make no mistake where you are. This is it. Your back's to the corner. This is it. Don't be a fool anymore. The waiting is over. No room to run. No way to hide. No time for wondering why. It's here. The moment is now. About to decide. But keep me near in your heart. Know whatever you do, I'm here by your side. Well, these words we can connect I feel, to all these words. At least I can. And at some point in our lives, we're always going through a reevaluation. Deep inner listening initially is about wondering and waiting. Before I had this impression to keep the fire, that morning I was wondering, I was waiting. Sometimes when I'm sitting and waiting, I don't know what is going to happen, and then a key seed thought comes through to speak to that may serve your heart. And then the song is about assertion and overcoming. The waiting is over. It's here. The moment is now. No way to hide. And then there's also hope. But keep me near to your heart. Know whatever you do, I'm here by your side. All of these words in this song, in a way, are about the spiritual path. Our path as souls, having a human experience. Is it a stand up and fight with others? No, it's not about fighting with anybody. It's really about an inner experience. A man named H.G. Wells, who lived from 1866 to 1946. He was a futurist. He wrote The Time Machine and the Invisible Man and other material. He said the man who raises a fist is the man who's run out of ideas. And so this isn't about an outer fight. This is about tending the fire of self, of one's own lifetime. It's about divine ideas. In unity, in this work, it's about working with divine ideas. It's about inspiration. It's about devotion. It's about consciousness. And so when we come into a place like this, or we're working our own spiritual lives, it's about looking for, what is going to inspire me? How can I devote myself? How can I give back? How can I open myself to receive the good that is mine, that in these teachings it says God is absolute good, and that we are essentially good because we are part of God, not cut off, not separate, but that we are part of God. And so I would like to explore this with you a little bit today. What are we behind the story that we have made up about life? And I would like you to, or I would invite you to, just listen to these words and let them in of who and what you are. I am made of divine love, by divine love, for divine love, as divine love. Divine love is the path. Divine love is the way. Divine love knows the path. The path is for divine love. I've found that over the years, my whole lifetime, I've been a stand for that. Where are you with that? Of allowing divine love to be more of your life experience? I don't know. I can't speak for you. but I can share my own life experience. Whether it was at a time when I was at Unity Village and I was standing by a fountain and the world literally stopped. My mind stopped. The outer depiction of events didn't stop. The fountain that I was looking at was pouring down and the birds were still chirping. But what I remember is that I was embraced by divine love. And another time I was sitting at my bedside in Sacramento, California, and I was in a real kind of a dark place on the edge of my bed, and I said, God, I need your help. I was 23 years old. I need your help. And I had the most beautiful downpour of divine love overshadow me. It just came and flowed through me, and it helped me to remember what the purpose is for this life. Another time I was driving through the Sierra Nevada mountains with my brother, and I had a book, and I was sharing it with him. All around us were these beautiful alpine peaks, beautiful crystal clear day, snow on the mountains. And I was reading to him from Jesus, the Son of Man by Khalil Gibran, a less known work than the prophet. But I was reading and sharing with my brother who was driving, because I really wanted him to get what I was experiencing in life. And he just looked at me and he says, "Man, you are so weird." So there's a timing for everyone's opening, right? I just kind of went, okay. But as we talked about some months ago, interesting, the word weird, right? It comes from the Welsh language that means having one foot in this world and one in the next. That's what weird means. So I guess I was born to be weird. I don't know about you. I had this interesting experience last Saturday. I have this phone connection, a Skype phone connection with a friend who still lives in Sedona. His name is Thomas. Thomas and I have been working together on the spiritual path for about 7 years now. Once a month, used to be twice a month, but now it's once a month, we get together on Skype. And he was talking about, today, Bruce, I would like to work with this idea of subject-object relationships. I said, oh, that's interesting. I don't know quite what that means, but yeah, I'm willing to explore. And as the session went on, and there was more and more attunement from 1,600 miles away, I was feeling something in my body over here. And he said, Bruce, what is that you're feeling on that side of your body right now? I didn't tell him about it. From 1,600 miles away, he sensed it. And so what does that say? Subject-object relationships is a dynamic that you and I live within the physical world. It's about time and place and depth and distance. But the omnipresence of God, the omnipresence of Spirit, is not about subject-object It is intimately always present to tell us that it loves us and that we are part of it all the time. And that's why later, mid-month in September, we're having a World Day of Prayer, where from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., people will come. You're all invited to come. We're going to hold space for the whole planet, for prayer, because in the unity work, there is no distance. There is no space or time in God. There is no space and time about you. We're just temporarily in a physical spacesuit, and we judge our progression or regression around whether or not and how we're doing or not doing. But the omnipresence of God reminds us that we are never alone. And that's why in the unity work, in the very early years, people used to come for prayer and healing. But then they understood that a woman, for instance, would write a letter into unity. This was before phones even. And request prayer. And then the prayer team with Myrtle Fillmore would pray for that person, and there would be immediate correction and healing. We call it quantum physics now. We call it the field, working within the field. The whole point is that the omnipresence of God is here right now. And I would invite us to have an experience right now of the omnipresence of God. So this is not just about an idea. Because one thing I know about us is that we require experiences. So we get out of our heads. So the kingdom of heaven, as described in the New Testament, is not a subject-object place. The kingdom of heaven is here and now. That's how healings take place. You and I have a challenge. Let's just say we have some health challenge. And we may be experiencing some fear around it. But if we cultivate deep inner listening, and we get in touch with our own life purpose and our mission, which may simply be to love ourselves for the rest of our lives, to truly love ourselves. Healings can happen. Beautiful things can happen. Shifts in consciousness can happen. What we had before that were grudges or grievances towards somebody else, trapped energy in the body, whatever, if we come to a place of deep inner listening and connection with the Spirit, these things evaporate. They just pop like bubbles on a pond. So in this moment, I invite you to take your hands and just put them on your chest. And entertain this thought. I am a soul in a body. I am a soul in a body. I am wonderfully made. There is nothing that can contain me or to hold me back. I am a soul in a body. Let's say that together. I am a soul in a body. So we take our identity out of subject-object relationship. We just simply are. We don't need to be attached to our achievements or our status or our history, our story. We just simply are a soul in a body. And we can bless the body, bless our circumstances. One of the things that my friend Thomas and I work with all the time is consciousness. And I get carried away sometimes with wanting to be more or better or different in consciousness. And Thomas just looks at me and he says, "This is it, Bruce. This is it. You're not going to be someone else. What we can do is clear and let go that which is not true, so that which is true can blossom and to come forth." And when he first said that to me, I felt like Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets. Do you remember when he's walking through the psychiatrist's office and he says, "Maybe this is as good as it gets"? But the deal is that it just keeps getting better with our identity in our spirit. Not as an object, not as a subject, but just as life, living life. This kind of inquiry has been going on for thousands of years. 2,000 years ago, there was a man that wrote a letter to people in Corinth. His name was Paul. And he said, "For the wisdom of this world is foolishness in God's sight." He was writing that from a place of divine love, of being in a consciousness of divine love. The wisdom of the world is foolishness unto God. So to let go of our identity of being somebody, of being a subject or an object of higher esteem than someone else in this world. I want to close by telling you that in October I'm going to start a class. It's going to be called The Metaphysics of Jobe. It's an inquiry into the book of Job, and it's also going to be an inquiry into Journey of Souls, which is a very, very deep and wonderful book. And it's going to be a great inquiry into what it is that we actually are in this subject-object universe that we find ourselves in. The book of Job is the tale, an allegory of a man who had everything and then lost everything and then found a greater truth That's the spiritual path in many ways. We don't have to lose everything, but it is about letting go of our identity about things. So I look forward to that class. I look forward to us sharing it together. Metaphysics is the study of the soul in an acceptance of its true estate. So this is it. It's a celebration to be who you are in a body right now on the earth. There's a whole lot of stuff going on the earth right now with humanity. And it is really, really important, at least in my mind and heart, to keep our identity very clear around the actual nature of right relationship with God. That's truly what will bring about inner happiness. At least that's my story. Hope you've gotten something out of today. God bless.